Laurent Duvernay-Tardif came out and compared the New York Jets now to the 2014 version of the Kansas City Chiefs. Is that fair? Is it crazy? Let's get into it. Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I'll be talking about LDT's comments about the Kansas City Chiefs, comparing it to the New York Jets, and all that fun stuff. Before we get started today, I just want to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY, and if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the Just Jets podcast and Just Jets Clips channel, wherever it is that you get your podcast. And if you want the bonus clips, right down below, Just Jets Clips channel. So LDT sat down with the Draft Network, which is a place that I really like to do my mock drafts. If you follow along with me, you probably know that already. But he did a little interview. He talked about, wanting to play in the league next year, wanting to potentially come back to the Jets, which I'd be all for. I think if, he's going to play in the league in 2022, you might as well bring him back for competition and depth purposes on your offensive line. And one of his quotes was interesting. If you want to read the full article, I absolutely think you should. It was a really good read. But this excerpt really stood out to me where he says, I can compare it to my experience with the Chiefs. This is when he's asked about just the second half improvements on the year. He says, I can compare it to my experience with the Chiefs. I first got there in 2014. It was Coach Reid's first season. Not true. It was the second. And we missed the playoffs. We knew how good we could be, though. I'm getting the same vibes here with the Jets. So, slightly different with the Kansas City Chiefs. And in 2013, Andy Reid's real first year, they went 11-5, made the playoffs. Then 2014, 9-7, missed the playoffs. But then from 2015 all the way through now, they've made the playoffs every year, 7 years straight. So what is that? 8 out of 9 years that Andy Reid's been the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, they made the playoffs. Now that is obviously very, very lofty comparisons, and I don't know. It caught me off guard, but I think the point that he is trying to make here is that while yes, they didn't do what what their ultimate goal was, to make the playoffs and be a competitive football team, but you could at least see the infrastructure or the direction, which that's really what I want to focus on. And yeah, the Chiefs is probably a lofty comparison. But what I will say is this. I think for the first time in a while, probably since the early 2010s, the Jets have a direction, which is really something they didn't have for a long time. I mean, let's think about it here for a second. Last night on the Jets Talk 24/7 Talking Jets panel, we were talking about the 98 team and the Jets' success from 98 to 2010 and how, they made 3 AFC title games. They were pretty much relevant every year. They didn't make the playoffs every year, but they made the playoffs a whole bunch. Had a few deep-ish playoff runs, and it was probably the best time to be a Jets fan, maybe ever, outside of the Super Bowl season. So, but what happened after that, there just never seemed to be a direction, whether it was Rex Ryan getting more control in personnel and just the core of those teams going away, whether it was firing Mike Tannenbaum and deciding to keep Rex Ryan and pairing him with John Idzik, whether it was letting John Idzik do 2 drafts, it was not a good hire. Then bringing in Mike Maccagnan and Todd Bowles, which just there was no direction there. Mike Maccagnan tried a quick rebuild and then a tear down rebuild, and it didn't work. And then Mike Maccagnan and Adam Gase, and then Gase and Douglas. Anything involving Maccagnan, you knew wasn't going to work because he was just not good at constructing a roster in any way, shape, or form. And with Adam Gase after that, do I have to say more? But now, around the league, Joe Douglas is a respected guy. Has he been a perfect GM? Absolutely not. He hasn't. There's been misses. Whether you want to point to free agency or to things that he's done in the draft that you would have done differently, all fair things. But it seems like there's an identity with this football team, which really wasn't the case, which is, again, the main point here that I wanted to bring up and that I think LDT is bringing up, is that they have an identity. On offense, they are trying to run the ball, build off of their wide zone scheme, play action, have, speed over the middle, stuff like that. Okay, good. That's their identity. Eventually, they're going to get tight ends so they could run a real West Coast offense. They tried to do that early on in 2021. It went terribly because they were running out Ryan Griffin, Trayvon Wesco, and Tyler Kroft in that mix. But hopefully the tight end room looks very different going forward. And on defense, they are trying to get after the quarterback. That's their goal. They brought in Carl Lawson and Vinny Curry last offseason. They weren't anticipating those guys to get injured and miss the entirety of the season. But it just seems very clear that they want to go off of pass rush and the West Coast style on offense, which is, again, similar because these guys come from the Shanahan coaching tree, which is, you see this a lot around the NFL. Do the Jets have to make a jump forward and make the playoffs in order for this prophecy to come true? No, but they have to continue to take these steps in the right direction. That's why I think you have so many people on here talking about the Jets winning 8, 9, 10 games, taking that significant leap forward, because for so long they've been stuck in the mud. And they've had those, last 2 years ago, I guess now, the 2-win seasons and the 4 and the 6-win seasons, and not really being able to get over the hump with only one winning season in 2015 when they won 10 games. Obviously, completely different looking roster now, but in today's league, there's a ton of parity, and if you have people like Duvernay-Tardif, who's been around winning organizations and can at least in his mind draw a comparison to that, that's pretty cool. I'll take that. And while I don't necessarily agree with the comparison, I don't think it's fair to talk about, that Chiefs roster in the mid 2010s to where the Jets are now. But if you get the quarterback right, well, things start to change for you pretty quickly, which is, again, kind of feeds back to my take and a lot of people's take on trying to make Zach's life as easy as possible, because then that makes things around you a little bit easier. But Laurent Duvernay-Tardif wanting to come back to the Jets, speaking highly of Robert Saleh, Mike LaFleur, and the future of the Jets is nothing but a good thing. It's a positive. So while this is more of a, hey, this quote is going to steal the headline, it's a positive. It's still a positive thing, even if I don't necessarily think it's the most appropriate comparison. It's still exciting to hear. So let me know what you thought of the quotes and the interview down below in the comments. Should the Jets bring back LDT? I think yes. I think they should bring him back for competition. I don't think he's going to cost you a whole lot. So you might as well do it. And they got him for nothing, right? They traded Daniel Brown for him and then ended up getting Daniel Brown back. One of Joe Douglas's better moves, clearly, because, well, Greg Van Roten was going to get somebody killed. That's going to do it for me on today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll talk to you next time.